Hey guys, Montel here, and welcome to this edition of Free Thinking with Montel. I'm so excited to have the guest that I have on today with me. My guest today is a former television anchor and an award-winning sports reporter. After graduating with a master's in journalism from the University of Southern California, she spent 2 years working for the Houston Texans as a media personality and over a decade of working in sports journalism. Her debut novel, which is called Sideline Confidential, was released in August of 2023. Through Sideline Confidential, she gives us a glimpse into the challenges women in professional sports and professional broadcasting face in a male-dominated world of pro sports. Brooke Bentley, thank you so much for being a guest on Free Thinking with Montel today.
Montel, thank you for having me. And I have to start by saying I'm a huge fan of yours. And I didn't even know if that was professional for me to start that way, but I really am. I've always admired your work and your service. I come from a family that has a lot of military veterans. And so I just really appreciated the way that you've honored that. And I'm a big fan. So I had to say that.
I thank you for that. Look, how about we talk a little bit about that just a second before we go into the interview about your sports broadcasting. You say you have a lot of family members who were in the military. What were they? Father, uncles, grandfathers? Who?
All of it. So grandfathers both served in World War II. And then my brother-in-law was in the Marines. He did 3 tours in Afghanistan.
Oh, how's the Marine doing? Yeah.
And then another brother-in-law who was a surgeon in the Air Force, and he ran trauma units for several years, I think almost 4 or 5 years in Afghanistan.
What were their ranks?
Oh gosh, I'm looking at one of them, his flag, we have a sort of a shrine to them over this computer. So I'd have to go back and look. But it's, they have really also influenced my children. And so I really love that they can share those stories with them. And I have 2 sons. And it's important for them to know the sacrifices people in our military have made for our country.
And I'm not putting you in a political position here. You don't have to make a political statement, but what do you think about what's going on right now when it comes to our military? I'm sure that the member of your family who was a surgeon was an officer. And I don't know if you know that, recently our service members have been held up by one particular senator who has blocked the promotions and for our veterans for our servicemen who are serving right now. These guys have already made and met all the requirements to be promoted. They're on the list. And for the last 4 months now, they've not been able to be promoted. Therefore, they've not been able to, in some cases, go to their new assignments. In other cases, they're kind of like sitting in limbo. They don't know what they're doing. This is ridiculous. I mean, as a service member myself, I couldn't imagine, I made 04, I got deep selected 04, and had I made 05, that means I did everything what was required by me to deserve my promotion. And now I've got some yahoo who's holding up. What do you think about that as a family member or service member?
I mean, that is my brother-in-law's exact same sentiments. He's talked to us about that, my family about that quite a bit, because look, they're putting their lives on the line, and the amount of sacrifice that these men and women undertake, it's humbling, but it's also then so upsetting to see that they're not promoted. And like you said, just hanging in limbo. My brother-in-law, he was running trauma units where he didn't sleep at night. I mean, he was sleeping 2 to 3 hours a night because people were coming in. He was performing amputation after amputation, he said. And I mean, the experiences he had there, and now he can run any surgical unit in the United States, and it seems easy. But people don't really have an appreciation for that. And I think that is hard for him.
Absolutely. And I think it's probably hard. He's got children.
I'm sorry, I have 2 children.
No, does he have children?
Oh, he does. Yes, he has 2 children as well.
So therefore, it's, what people don't understand, civilians don't understand, is that it's not just the service member not getting his new rank. It puts this person in a position where their entire family has to suffer. They can't be transferred. They can't be transferred to their new jobs. And if they do get transferred to their new jobs, they do so without necessarily the additional pay that new job would have given them. So therefore, when they go to the new job, their children may or may not be enrolled in new schools. They're going to have difficulty getting a mortgage, it's just ridiculous.
Yeah, it trickles down through the entire family. Yeah,
absolutely.
And benefits. I mean, the list goes on.
Absolutely. I'm sorry. I appreciate when you brought up the military. I wanted to make sure we let people at home understand that there's something
That's why I
needs to.
brought it up, Montel. I just, I thought about it this morning when I woke up and I said, I got to say something because this is something that is, very important to my family.
Sure, for sure, without a doubt. Well, look, let's back up a little bit. Again, thank you so much for joining me today. Tell me a little bit about where you grew up, and what motivated you to get into sports journalism.
So, Montel, I grew up in Houston, Texas. I played sports as a little girl. I loved volleyball, basketball, tennis, track and field, all of the sports. And I loved going to the hometown games. And I got to go to Rockets games when Akeem Olajuwon was playing. And
Oh,
I
go
was
ahead.
a huge Akeem fan. And I was at a game and I saw a woman anchor walk by. Her name's Lisa Malowski, and she had this red blazer on. And I looked at my dad and I said, "That's what I want to be when I grow up." I mean, I thought it was so cool to be in the action of the games. And that really stuck with me. And so, I went through school. I played volleyball at Davidson College. Most people know it as Steph Curry's school. And when I was in college, I thought, well, I don't know, what can I really make it as a sportscaster? I should probably do something more practical. So I decided that I would work for a law firm and I would be an attorney. And I worked for a law firm for a little bit and did not enjoy that. I was an intern and thought, no, I really, really want to be in sports broadcasting. I love to write, I love to tell stories, and I love sports. And so I ended up going to USC and I got my master's in journalism. And right out of school, I got a job with the Houston Texans. They were bringing media in house to own their own media. So they were putting all TV shows, radio shows, radio broadcasts of the game. They wanted full ownership of that, and they would sell the advertising. And so I was part of that group that was bringing all of that media in house.
And when they bought you in house, I mean, did you think this is a career? I'm shocked for yourself. Did you think, man, I'm shocked. They really do appreciate a woman's contribution. So this is going to be a great gig, or was it trepidation? What was going on in your mind?
You know, I was so young and so naive. I don't really know what I was thinking, except for I made it to the NFL. I mean, this is the biggest deal in sports. And I thought, I'm going to go straight to the top from here. And I had no appreciation for how hard it is for young women, especially, to climb the ranks. Because immediately when you walk in, people assume you don't know what you're talking about, especially in football, because most women don't play football. And so, I mean, I definitely had to prove to the other people in the room that I knew my stuff. I was there because I wanted to be a journalist. I wanted to cover the team, not because I wanted to hang out with coaches and players. Because there's that automatic assumption, especially when you're young. Now, when you're a veteran reporter and you've been out there for a long time, if you're, someone who's really climbed Holly Rowe, who's been a longtime college reporter for ESPN, Andrea Kramer. I mean, those people, of course, they've been seasoned. Everyone respects their work, they're pros. But as a young woman, I felt like I really did have to prove myself extra hard. There were also things, Montel. I mean, first day of work, I was told that I needed to ride my own bus, that they were worried about me riding a bus with players and coaches because I would be a distraction with them on game days. And I thought, these players play next to cheerleaders. I mean, like, what is the big deal? But that did change over the course of the season. The players and coaches all realized, I mean, everyone realized that I was part of the team and there was really no difference. And then they let me ride the bus. But that initial experience really stuck with me. And it made me think about, there's probably so many other women with other stories like mine, and these stories together could be a book.
And but then you were straddling a line in a way. I mean, I'm not saying inside yourself.
Yeah,
Please, yes.
go ahead. Excuse me. I'm sorry.
No, no, no. Because I don't want my question to be as ignorant as I think it sounds. But here you are, a young woman. There's a lot of attractive guys. And I'm not saying that that's the only thing, that's not the only thing on your mind. But at the same time, that's something that's on your mind. I think it'd be impossible to not be on your mind.
Right,
So,
especially when you're young and you don't have that compass of, moral compass and that lifetime of knowledge to really guide you through a situation like that. I mean, there were definitely situations that I was in that I was not handling well. And I wanted to convey that in the book because it's hard when you're young and you don't know how to stand up for yourself, or you don't know um, really where a boundary is. And I think that for me, the hardest part as a young woman is I felt so lucky to be there. I felt so lucky to have a job in the NFL that I was willing to sort of to do whatever I was told to do it. And I put in the book, there's a scene about the media group going on some group team bonding to a strip club. I mean, that happened with a lot of teams. And that was something that for me was uncomfortable. Now, for me, I said no, I left. But there were other women who have felt very uncomfortable and been in that situation and gone because they felt like they needed to be with their coworkers. It's I feel like I was straddling a line, and for me, it was kind of like they wanted a pretty face, but they wanted someone who knew their stuff. I mean, they don't want someone up there talking, being on the jumbotron, being on the team's website, being on shows on radio, who has no idea what she's talking about. But they was like, you need to be pretty, but not sexy. You need to know your stuff, but don't know more than the guys. And I felt like I walked a tightrope, and it was as a young woman hard to navigate that.
Well, now you've mentioned it a couple of times, so let's make sure we talk about it. The book that you've just written, as a matter of fact, was published in August of this year. It's called Sideline Confidential, where you go into stories and you talk about, what it was like. Honestly, I should say, growing up, trying to do a legitimate job, but trying to figure out how you navigate this space. Now, you said this thing about the fact that, I guess, was it a coach or someone suggested that you go ahead and do these two team bonding events by going to strip clubs? Come on.
I think they were so used to having just men in this group, this media group. I was the first woman to consistently travel with the team. And so they suggested that. And then I got in the cab and went with everyone, and I look around and I'm like, I'm not comfortable here. And they understood that. They're like, yeah, you should go. But I just think that there was no awareness. And granted, I worked for the team for the Texans in 2007. So this is a while ago. But it's not that long ago to think about, like, wow, that's team bonding for a group. And you have a young woman in her mid-20s and you think that that's probably, that might make her uncomfortable. That didn't even register at first for
And nobody wanted to go with you to see the Chippendales, did they?
Oh no.
Right. Right.
So, but I had a lot of friends, and one of them was the first female columnist for the Houston Chronicle. Sports columnist for the Houston Chronicle, and she said that a lot of when she covered basketball a lot, and she would talk to different people in the front office from NBA teams, and they'd say, "Well, why don't you meet us? We're going to talk to some reporters. Meet us at the strip club later." And she was like, "No, I'm not doing that. Like, I know that I can get information off the record, but I'm completely uncomfortable with that. And I'm drawing a hard boundary there." And she just say, no, I'm happy to meet you beforehand in your lobby for a drink, something like that. But I don't go to strip clubs.
Right.
And so she said when she read the book, it gave her PTSD. She said, "Oh my gosh, I kept thinking about all those front office executives in the NBA who kept wanting me to meet them at strip clubs. And I kept saying no." And she said, "I know I missed out on information that other male reporters got because they did meet these executives there." But she said, I did not feel comfortable. And I mean, mine was sort of a blip in my career. I didn't go. I got on the cab and went home. But her story is, and I did talk to her because I had her read my manuscript. And she's like, "No, you need to make this scene central to the book because that happens a lot for women in this industry." And she said, and for me, it was really hard.
And I guess, there's some more things that must have been extremely central to this. You're a very attractive lady. And so therefore, you're probably, I can't imagine, just navigating one full day without being overtly over sexualized.
Yeah. I mean, there was definitely comments, text messages. When I left the team, I went on to become a sports anchor and reporter for a station. I gave my phone, my team issued phone, to the next guy who took my position. And he contacted me and he said, I had to actually ask the team for another phone because I was getting so many crude messages. He said, "I'm so sorry that you got those. That made me very uncomfortable." And I just ignored them for the most part. And I would say most of the men that I worked with in the locker room were very respectful. They were very nice to me, but there are quite a few young guys who come in and just think it's funny to do that. Or maybe they think that, I'll say yes and want to, I don't know. But I would say, and a lot of the good players, there's so many great guys that I feel very lucky to have covered or to have worked with when I was with the team. But there were a few that sent messages that, I mean, I would screenshot them. So I had them for my records and I would just let it lie and never answered them because I knew that could come back to bite me.
And now, I mean, I guess you must have been not shaken, but at least you understood what a soccer player, female soccer player, recently went through on the Spanish team, having a coach literally just think it's okay to grab you by the face and kiss you right dead in the mouth, and it's something that you want. I mean, what do you think about what just happened there and transpired? Fortunately, the guy did just finally step down, and he's done. I do. I was a little, just slightly torn, not really torn, because I'm telling you, it's 2023. Come on, homeboy. You don't know you can't grab a girl by the face and kiss her in the mouth. But I kind of, in my brain, went, okay, I see it from his perspective. I'm just so excited. We just won. Oh my God. But that's inappropriate. So what did
Right.
you think?
It's very funny. I've been doing a book tour, and a lot of people have asked me about this as I've been at bookstores. And obviously, it's a burning subject in sports, especially in sports and with women. And so, you know, it's a line that you can't cross. Like, you cannot touch someone and kiss someone that way. I mean, even if you're excited, maybe a big hug and like lift them up, but you don't need to kiss someone on the mouth.
Right.
And he had to resign. I mean, he really had no choice at
Right.
that point. And I mean, especially because the way FIFA has looked in the past, like there was no margin for error there. Like, he had to resign. But I have seen some things that he has I don't want to say complained, but he's saying that now his life has been ruined. He's getting hate mail, death threats, all these messages, which is wait, people should never do that. Like, you don't want to
Keep
ruin.
your lips in your pocket. I'm so well. I agree with you. No, he does not deserve the vitriol that's come after this.
Right.
But I
But
think in some
he
ways he
deserves
asked for it.
yeah, but he deserves not to have a job. Like, I mean, that's it's a fireable offense.
And at the same time, I'm sorry, he doubled down. And
Yeah,
this
he did. You're right.
we're living in this world of I don't do anything wrong, and I'm gonna double down on this. But the truth of the matter is, when the complaint first came in, he should have stepped to the table and said, "I am so sorry. Just the emotions of the moment got to me, and I was excited. That was not anything sexualized. It was just the same way I would walk up to a man and kiss him on the cheek. And you go to Italy, or you go to some other place in Europe, and men will kiss each other on the cheeks, cheek and cheek. It's like, okay, hold on, homeboy, I don't need you to kiss me. But at the same time, you're in that kind of position, and the world has cameras on you this way. You got to check yourself.
100%. I mean, and at that magnitude, at that level, you can't do that. It's
Right.
just like,
Right.
no, we can't do it ever, whenever. Like, it makes a woman uncomfortable. Like, you have to respect that. And I really felt like he, if he had apologized and handled the situation better, maybe there would have been, I don't know, less of an outcry.
Yep. A
But
little contrition.
yeah, but there was none.
Right.
And he deserves not to have his job, unfortunately.
Absolutely. I will agree with you 100%. You said something earlier. You're one of those girls, as a teenager, you like sports, and you really valued sports. I have a daughter who is in her later 30s, but this child watches more football than I have ever watched in my life, and she always has. I mean, she had. Let's go back 12 years ago. She was one of the first girls I ever knew that was part of the fantasy football thing. It was
Oh,
crazy.
wow.
My daughter loves football, and I mean, to the point that there are some days that I'm like, I'm not. I'm so sorry. I'm not that into it. Now I did watch a game last night, the whole game, but for years now, I've kind of pulled a little bit away from football. My daughter knows every player on half the teams, and she could tell you who ran for that. And I'm like, really? And she said, yeah. And I, she could be a broadcaster if she wanted to. She's a makeup artist, and she's doing really, really well as that. Um, but you said something earlier that people just don't think you have the gravitas, the educational expertise, or you studied. Did you feel like that was something after a while that people started to say, well, you know what, Brooke does know her stuff?
Yes. I think after I worked for the Texans, working in the NFL gives you immediate street cred, because obviously it's football at the highest level. Second of all, you have to be pretty tough to cut it in the NFL, especially as a young woman. I mean, to know that you've been with a team, you've learned their schemes, you've been able to keep up knowledge wise to cover them and know exactly what's going on from personnel, who's being drafted, you know, from schematics, all of that. I learned a ton. But then I think too, when I went to cover teams, pro teams, college teams, even high school football in Texas is a huge deal. I mean, it is in Florida too. It's a huge deal in Texas. And so coaches wherever I went or other outlets really respected that I had worked for the Texans and I'd cut my teeth there. And I felt like I was treated differently. And I get it. When you're new in any job, I don't know, people maybe doubt where you're coming from, but I also feel like I worked in a situation where I was new to my position, right out of graduate school. There was an intern who was right out of college, and people would defer to him and ask him the questions and not me. And it was
Hmm.
automatically assumed that he would know the football answers. And I sat down with coaches when I got to the Texans, and I was really lucky because I had several coaches who really wanted to help me learn. And one of them said, "All right, listen, he was a secondary coach. He goes, I want to teach you all of our packages, our nickel and dime packages. I want you to sit down and learn this so that you know when people ask you about our defense, you understand what's going on in the secondary." I had receivers coaches work with me and learn our routes. And I really felt like I worked so hard to know that because I was terrified not to know. I mean, I felt like then no one's going to really take me seriously.
And it must have been powerful when the first time they asked the intern and he didn't know and you knew, right?
Well, the funny thing was is that he was terrified as far as media goes. Like he didn't want to be in front of the camera. And so they would say, "Oh, well, he should do that." And he's just like, "No, no, no, that's Brooke's job." He's like, "Please, like I'm really here to collect quotes. Like, please ask Brooke." He was great. I mean, he wanted to support me, but he kept saying, he's like, "I don't understand." What was funny, he said, "I don't understand because everyone defers to me for questions." And he said, "And I think it's obviously just because I'm a male." But a lot of the players really supported me and they knew that I had worked hard to really get to know the team's offense and defense, the personnel, their stories, all of that. And so they would say, "Okay, I'm going to give Brooke an interview first, and then I'm giving an interview to so and so," because they knew that. And I really appreciated that.
And now, I mean, when you see a game, people don't understand. It looks glamorous when the camera cuts to you and you're standing on the sideline and you got that microphone and you're talking to the guy. But most people didn't see the fact that you had to run 60 yards to get to that place,
Oh
or
my
you had
God.
to run another 60 yards to get to another place, or you had to bustle through and run by the tables right. I mean, there's so much that goes on off camera that it's almost more off camera than it is on camera.
Oh, Montel, you hit the nail on the head. I could tell you stories for days. I mean, what's really great is that now, like sneakers, tennis shoes, they're all glamorous and people can wear them on camera. If you look at the ESPN anchors, they're all wearing tennis shoes. I mean, when I was doing sidelines in the beginning, everyone wore heels or, these uncomfortable shoes, and you were racing around the field trying to get an injury update or, get in position for the next play if someone had thrown a huge deep pass, a bomb. But I mean, I think my favorite story, I was 8.5 months pregnant. I was doing a college game at Energy Stadium where the Texans play. And I ran down the field to cover, I think it was, I covered an injury. That's what it was. And so I ran down the field and I wasn't prepared for a team to score because I was really like trying to figure out this player was being carted off. I was getting my notes together. I was about to go live and do a cut in, and a team scored and a cannon went off right where I was standing at 8.5 months pregnant. I mean, I literally was like, I almost wet my pants. It was like, my baby's going crazy in my stomach. And the producer goes, "Oh my gosh, if you go into labor, we are definitely making top plays on ESPN." I'm like, I really don't want to go to labor right now. Like, that is not at all what I want.
I don't want all these football players around me trying to figure out who's going to deliver, right?
Right. I was like, no, let's not even talk about that. But yeah, and then I was like, just give me a second to collect myself. So I like took a few seconds and then I went on camera to give my injury report. But I had to laugh because I'm like, no one saw the last 5 minutes where I literally was like, my baby's like punching my stomach. And
There are more female sportscasters and journalists, I think, in sports now than I has ever been. I mean, do you see the field improving? Do you see, do you think that and I don't say this as an aspersion, but it's no longer we have to have that, make sure that we have that one woman on the sideline, but now it's just you are part of the makeup based on your ability and your skill rather than your sex. And so do you see there's more opportunities now based on that than there had been?
I do. I think that in the beginning, women started out on the sidelines, and now you see them color commentary, even play by play. I mean, you look at Doris Burke and what she's done covering basketball. Really, the industry has changed. I will give it credit because there has been a momentum forward. And I actually wanted to portray that in my book, that there is a sense of change out there. I think that, there's more opportunities for women. It's hard because there are limited opportunities out there in sports journalism to begin with. And so it seems like there's these few coveted spots that are held by women. And so a lot of times it can feel like women are competing against each other. But I feel like sort of as more women get into different positions, not just sideline reporting, but they're on the radio, they're doing play-by-play, color commentary, they're sports columnists, that it's really become more women supporting women, and there's just more opportunities. Now, I think it is still hard for young women breaking in. And that's what I wanted to address in my book, because I just think that it's still, there's this bias that they don't quite know as much. They don't know how to handle these situations like a man would. And so, and I will also say it is harder for women in the industry being a mom than a male in that industry. I mean, just like silent reporting, a male isn't going to be pregnant on the sidelines. A woman is. And so having children, traveling, I mean, I ended up leaving my career ultimately because I worked nights, weekends, and holidays. And I missed my oldest son taking his first steps. I think it was in Louisiana that day. And then my youngest son, I realized after a football season, I had hardly seen him or my family. It had been 6 months, and he'd become this other baby. And I was like, I feel like I don't recognize him. And I said, I need a football season off. And I took a little bit of time away, and I was doing some nonprofit writing. And that's when I started writing my book, because I just thought, I have all these stories to share. I have friends who've worked for other teams. I have friends who've worked in sports journalism for a long time, and we're all close and we've shared our experiences, and I could put them together and write something kind of like The Devil Wears Prada, but in the NFL, but with a message. And so that's how it all came together.
Now, do you think, and hear me with this one, because this is, I'm just throwing it out. I'm not, again, making a statement one way or the other, but don't you think that right now, because women's sports are finally starting to really grow around the world, from soccer to tennis. I mean, I watched the other day the Coco Gauff.
Oh my gosh, wasn't that amazing?
I didn't get
So
to see the whole
inspired by that, Montel.
I am too, but I can tell you something. What ticked me off a little bit was when it was over and they went to interview her, there were only 3 women sitting at the table interviewing her. There wasn't a man. Now, does it mean that we can't have men interview women? I mean, you don't have men interviewing women outside their locker room or in their locker room. What's going on here? Is there like a reverse discrimination going on? Because as female sports grow, as they grow, it seems as if, the media industry only believes that women have the right to interview other women. And that's not right. I mean, I think there's so many men who were just as impressed by Coco Gauff's when if I had been a sports journalist, I would have loved to have been the person sitting there at that table, asking her some questions and trying to see, as a dad. I mean,
Yeah.
But that's not there. And if you watch women's tennis now, I'm telling you, 95% of the people who do the questioning are all females.
That's a good
And
point.
then when you watch women's soccer, it's almost like it's relegated to just female reporters, and it should not be. If we want to have, a sexually, unbiased portrayal, we should have as many men participating in women's journalism for sports as we do women participating in men's for sports, right? Or no?
I agree. You want a different perspective. That's what's great about having a woman's perspective in football, is that sometimes you get more of the players' stories behind the pads, behind the helmet, seeing who they are, what their families are like. It offers a different perspective sometimes than what the traditional male stories might be. That I'm sorry to put people in tropes, but it just, different sexes have different perspectives. I think that I would love to hear John McEnroe interview Coco Gauff. I think it's important to have those different perspectives. And like you said,
especially
he was so nervous he couldn't sit in the players' box. He's way up in the stands, and she ran to go hug him. It was such a sweet and tender moment. Like, I wanted to hear more about that too.
Right. I wanted to hear a little bit more about the fact that when she was saying that the player she was playing against, she threw out a comment about the fact, well, I practice against a lot of men, and nobody picked up on that. I really wish they picked up on that, because that's how she got that power and the
Yeah.
ability to return those powerful serves. Not that she's not getting power hits from other women, but I mean, we do know that men do hit that ball about 5 miles an hour faster than the
They
woman
do.
does. And so, for a woman to actually train against men and beat them the way she does, I think I would have wished that somebody would have picked up on that comment, but they didn't do that.
That's a really good point because like you said, a Bail reporter in there would have, because that would have registered more. Yeah, I mean, I completely agree. I think what's so great is having different perspectives, different diversity of opinions out there. And that's going to give you a more complete story.
I'm sorry, I knew you had kids, but I didn't know. Do you have any girls?
I do not.
Yeah,
I
boy.
have I had two sisters and then I had two boys.
Okay. And would you wish? Well, would you hope? Do your sisters have any daughters?
They do. Yes,
Okay.
and one of
Would you
yes.
suggest to them a career as a sports commentator?
Yeah, I mean, if that's what their dream is, yes. I mean, I loved it. I loved the adrenaline of being on the field and following a game. And I covered mainly football, but I also did color commentary for volleyball games, which was such a treat for me. I mean, that was like dessert. I just like, I played volleyball, and to get to be out there covering it, to me was I don't know. It was just so fun and easy because I already knew everything. Um,
Here, here comes my. You can hit me for this, because this would be a sexist question. If
yeah,
I bet somebody's going to say I'm trying to be sexist about this, but I'm not. But as a mom with two boys, would you recommend your boys play football? Especially with what we're starting to find out now, the fact that they have not covered and figured out how to protect those heads the way they should. And unfortunately, 10 or 15 years after a sport, is when we start to develop issues from the sport. And I'm not trying to cast an aspersion against volleyball or even soccer,
yeah.
but the heading of that ball, believe it or not, I remember I used to have a very close friend of mine. His name is Dr. Joseph Maroon. I don't know if you know who Dr. Maroon was.
Yeah.
Dr. Maroon was one of the leading NFL neurologists, University of Pittsburgh. I think he ran one of the first concussive injury centers in the country. And he had commented to me about, what people don't understand is that we all look at football and we say, football, that's where most of the head trauma comes from. But Montel, believe it or not, the majority of people who end up suffering later in life from head trauma are young girls. And
Oh,
why?
really?
Because girls don't have the neck strength, and this is not no aspersion. You don't have the same muscular development in your neck. And when you are a 13, 14, 15-year-old little girl and you have a coach bounce a ball off your forehead, you literally are rattling your brain way more than or as much as a person who takes a hit on a football field. And
Oh,
sometimes that rattling of that brain doesn't show up until mid 20s, early 30s. There's association between some forms of postpartum depression and teenage, soccer and volleyball playing in females. A lot of people are starting to look at that now and understand that, the fact of the matter is, yes, if we did the same amount of neck, first off, no girls want to walk around with 18-inch necks, because, but we take a look at the female athlete versus the male athlete. That neck strength is what actually helps to protect the head a little bit from that waver when you get smacked in it. So,
right.
you
You know,
know, it, go ahead.
well, I'll say back to football. My sons are 7 and 9. They play flag football right now,
Right?
and they love it. I mean, and like I said, Texas football is the main sport here. So it is their favorite extracurricular sport right now, and it's fairly, I think, at the flag level, it's safe. They're 7-on-7. You're pulling a flag. There's no contact otherwise. They're wearing soft helmets. And there's been more injuries in our baseball little league than 7-on-7 flag football. Tackle, I don't know. I mean, that's something that I think that starts in sixth grade in Texas. There are options for fifth graders, but we wouldn't do it then. And football has obviously become a gladiator sport. It's
Right.
You have to be big. You have to be really strong. There are exceptions, but for the most part, like it's the really big guys. And I have one son who's bigger, and he's a more of a bruiser, and then one who's a lot smaller. And I don't know if the smaller one will play, and it scares me a little bit to think
Did you see Dallas last night? Did you watch
my gosh,
Dallas?
that's so funny. I literally, as I was talking about smaller players, I was just
There are
thinking about
three. They got 3 players on their team. I think they're under
under
5'10".
there's a player who is 5'5", Montel. That
That's
does not happen in the NFL. He was tiny. He scored a touchdown.
Yeah, that's right. That's
Yeah,
right. 5'5", 175 pounds, something like that. Come on now.
I know. I mean, I was like, my husband's like, I'm bigger than that. That's crazy.
Well, what was very funny. I went to the Naval Academy. I graduated from Naval Academy in Annapolis, and on the East Coast there is a full league that's called 150-pound football, where
Oh,
no
really?
player on the team can be bigger than 150 pounds.
Yeah.
And that seems to have reduced the number of injuries in college football because you have people of the same size running into each other, people of the same size tackling each other, guys that aren't, at 150 pounds, you're not generating that momentum force, when you contact. And I've often wondered why there isn't a league that, limit the player size to 180, limit the
Right.
player size to 175, so that you don't have these 320-pound guys, or 285. No, I'm sorry, the 320s normally don't run that fast. The 280s, the 275ers that can run a 5 flat 40. Come on now. That's like that's a behemoth coming down the field running right at. It's a car.
Right. Well, I've seen it some in youth football in Texas because people started to drop out. They were starting to lose parents because everyone was worrying about concussion issues. So now leagues do have weigh-ins. And so you can still play if you weigh over, say 100 pounds, but you wear a special jersey. You're not allowed. There's certain rules then if you're wearing, I think it's like, a red 90 jersey that they all put on if they're over 100 pounds, and they have special rules for those players. This is in a youth league. Now in high school or middle school football, it's just everyone makes the team. The best players make the team, and you go at each other.
Right.
And so, I've worked enough games where I've seen at the high school level some pretty devastating injuries. And so, I think, oh my goodness, do I want my boys to do that? I don't know. The answer right now, like, I think I'll let them try and see if they like it. But I do have pause because I've seen those injuries, Montel, and it's hard to watch, especially when it's a high school kid. And you're thinking, I've seen one get carted off in an ambulance, and they thought about airlifting him because they were worried, he didn't have movement from his neck down. Now he ended up regaining it, but for a few minutes, it was literally, there was no one taking a breath in the stadium. Everyone was pretty scared. And they were calling in for a helicopter, and he ended up starting to move, and they took him on the ambulance. But that moment really shook me, and I told my husband when I came home. That's when my little one was, I think, a few months old, and I said, "Oh gosh, now I'm scared for my boys to play football. I've covered it. That's been my career, and I'm like, I worry about them being out there."
Well, then one more question for you. What do you think about the phenomena that finally American football, for the longest time, football was always soccer internationally, but now football is really starting to gain, attraction internationally. And we have player teams. Did you ever have to travel with the Texans to Europe to play a game?
I just traveled within the United States. I did not go with him to a London game or to a Mexico City game, because obviously Texas is so close to Mexico. They've really tried to build up the fan base across the border. And so that was an initiative that was starting when I was there, but I was not there for one of the Mexico City games. And yeah, the NFL is popular, and they've done, obviously through their TV contracts, and the TV product is so good. They reign supreme in the United States, but you now see it, like you said, more internationally. And
I think
I
that's
was just in
still.
Mexico not that long ago for someone's wedding, and we're walking down the streets in San Miguel de Allende, and someone had on a Texans jersey. I was sort of shocked.
Right. It's very funny. I think I can't remember the numbers now, but it was something like 16 out of the top 20 most viewed television things in the last year was all football.
It was all football. Yeah, it is. Yeah. It,
Crazy. Do you intend to get back in front of the camera on the sideline or what?
I don't think so. I really enjoyed writing this book. I loved writing Sideline Confidential. People have asked me about writing a sequel, so I've been churning on that. I really do love writing about sports, though, because I feel like sports brings out so much of the human condition. And so I've thought about a little bit of a book about the Little League culture in Texas too, and maybe Pee Wee football. Anyways, I have a few ideas churning that I think I'll turn to.
Well, it's very interesting. You say the culture of football. It's very interesting how, we can all just get along on a football field, no matter what your race, color, creed, doesn't matter what your sexual preference is.
Yep.
We get along on a football field. But when we walk out of that football field, it's like, we can't anymore.
Isn't that
Um,
amazing? You're
it's
in it for that game. You're in it for a common purpose. And fans too. I mean, you see in the stands people of all shapes, colors, sizes, everything. And they're in it for their team. And then it's so hard when you leave the stadium to have that common bond. But with the sport, it can bring people together from all walks of life.
You do mention and talk a little bit about the double standard of appearance in, this industry, especially when it comes to commentators like yourself. What do you have to say to those who haven't gotten it yet? That it's not, you have to have this pretty girl. You have to have a knowledgeable person who understands what they're talking about.
I think, well, you have to know what you're talking about because no one wants to listen otherwise. I think that there was a time in the beginning when women were starting to be in more positions on the sidelines that some networks hired pretty faces because they wanted to make a splash. And those women didn't last as long. Their careers didn't last as long because they didn't necessarily know the sports, the in and outs of broadcasting, maybe as much as more veteran reporters did. But I mean, I think that there is a bias towards women who have a certain look. And I mean, Erin Andrews is excellent at what she does. She's also beautiful, and I don't think that hurts her. And she gets lots of commercials. She gets tons of endorsements. I mean, she's a really good reporter, so I'm not trying to knock her, but I do think it also helps when you have a certain look, and she has that. But there's also women who, I mean, I think there's just so many women who've lasted in the industry that they're just pros. I mean, you see like Lisa Salters, she's been doing it forever. She's amazing. And it doesn't matter that like they're so good, it doesn't matter. They're just above that. So it really like none of the other things matter because their questions are good. They follow the game so well. They have great rapport with coaches and players. And so the product you're going to get. And if you're that good, it just doesn't matter.
Did we not? Wasn't it this year that we saw for the first time a female referee on field or pro game?
Yes, I mean, this year in the NFL, there's 6 assistant coaches who are females. Never before has there been that.
Never before. Do you think that's going to grow?
I think so. I mean, I was researching, that came across somewhere on a news feed, and I thought, no way, like this has to be something made up. And then I looked, and there are, and they all have great backgrounds, and they've worked for, arena teams in the past, or they've worked for college teams. They've worked their way up, and they're not just sort of being put there because they're a female and a team wants to have a PR stunt. They seem very accomplished. So I'm excited to see what happens in that capacity.
And in that vein, you must be appalled when you see, I don't know if there's one of those leagues out there this year with the women out in the bikinis and the shoulder pads.
Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that, Montel.
Right. I can imagine you're not.
No, I mean, I think someone else was talking about starting a league that was like a topless women's sports league, and I thought, really?
What? Really? I want to see. Excuse me. My first thought is I want to see a whole bunch of bruised boobs. Excuse my mouth for saying it that way, but
I mean, it's just bizarre. It's like I don't. Would that be enjoyable for anyone? Like even them? I don't. Anyways,
I can't.
Ahead of that one.
I've been channel surfing, and not this year, but last year I remember I was channel surfing. And I went by. I went, "Are you kidding me?" And I just kept going because that's nothing. There's nothing erotic about it. There's nothing about it.
There's not exactly. I know. I mean, I guess there's money to be made somehow that way, but I don't. I'm personally not a fan.
Well, you did just say next for you is possibly some more writing. Anything else you'd like to add?
This book for me had, like we've gone through my career. I've been so proud of my reporting career, but this book to me has been my greatest achievement so far because I really feel like I could touch young women, not just in sports journalism, but in any profession where they're entering a male dominated workforce. And so this has just been a really enriching experience to be out talking about this book and then to talk to you, Montel. I told you, I mean, I've been a big fan of yours. So this is super cool. And I'm really grateful that you had me on.
Brooke, thank you so much for being a part of the show today. I know our viewers are going to really, really, really love this interview. If they wanted to get more information about you, where would they go?
My website, brookebentley.com. You can learn more about me. I have some other writing articles that I've done, and you'll see all the media, and you can buy the book. It's being
Great.
sold wherever books are sold: Amazon, Target, Barnes & Noble, Books A Million, all of the places.
Well, they need to get out and get a copy of it. And thank you so much for being a part of the show today. I wish you well, your family well, and hopefully, don't give up on being in front of that camera.
Oh, thank you, Montel. I appreciate that.
Absolutely. You take care of yourself and be well.
You too.
Thank you. And thank you for tuning in to this edition of Free Thinking with Montel. Thanks for joining me on Free Thinking with Montel. Please make sure you're subscribed and hit the bell to be notified when new episodes post each week. We'd love to hear feedback, so please send us your comments.